Hey you guys, so last night I was reminded of something that I think is really important and worth remembering. And that is that in Genesis 3, we see the fall of humankind. So Eve is in this garden, this serpent is tempting her, and he begins to ask her questions. And so basically he asked her, did God say that you can't eat eat the fruit of the trees? And she's like, no, we can eat the fruit of the trees, but from this particular tree we cannot eat or we'll die. So then the enemy goes on to tell her, like, you're not going to die. God just doesn't want you to be like him. He doesn't want you to know good and evil. And you can read this in Genesis 3. But so basically, the moral of the story is that, Eve ends up biting from this whatever fruit, and her eyes were open, and therefore that led to the fall of humanity. So the thing that I think is really important for us to remember is that Satan is cunning, right? The serpent is cunning. He wasn't trying to figure out if Eve knew God's command. He wasn't trying to figure out if Eve was aware of right and wrong. He wasn't trying to figure out whether or not Eve actually knew what God had told her. The thing that he was getting at is that he was seeing if she trusts God's command. So it's not good enough that we just know what God says. It's, do we trust what God says? And, obviously, just in terms of your own life, there are things that God has told you, has spoken over your life. And I think that it's really important for us to not only know what he's spoken in our life, but to trust the things that he has spoken over our life and live a life that says, I do trust you, God. And so I think that that's just really important. She knew what he said, but she didn't trust him. And therefore, the enemy was able to deceive her. And she ended up eating of the fruit of temptation. It was pleasing to the eye. Temptation is always pleasing to the eye. She decided to take matters into her own hands. And that's what happens when we don't trust the Lord. So at any rate, I was just reminded of that. And so I want to encourage you with that today. And hopefully it blesses you. Hopefully it reminds you. Hopefully it confirms something that was already spoken over your life. But just remember that it's one thing to know God. It's one thing to know what he says, but then there's this whole other level of like trusting him in the things that he has said.